I'd like to show you some administrative functions for a couple minutes here. So I'm going to go ahead and log in as an administrator. Whoops. Have to be able to spell. Administrator is the one account that does not show up on the pull-up, and the actual password is whatever you set it to on the database. Okay, so when you have advanced tools here, and we have a lot of administrative tools, and this is what we want to take a look at for a second. First one, obviously, is a user manager, and this is where we're creating new users, or editing existing users. For example, if I had an existing user, by name Chinese Trainee Yes. Okay, I can add and subtract different powers that he has and say okay. If I want to put in a new user, just type in his new name, password, whether it expires or not, and then I can set him up. Is he a standard user, a power user, or a manager? All right. And then within these, I have some item-specific permissions. All right, there's some global permissions you get with being like a manager, but even a manager, we can click whether or not he's a trainer or not. Okay, so the power user might actually be a trainer, but the manager might not be actually qualified as a trainer. You need to take a minute to go through these. Generating new reports is pretty straightforward. Exporting jobs. Remember, we have a tool in there that allows you to zip up a template or a job into an archive and then walk away with it on a flash drive. So you may or may not want to allow him that power. It's very similar to transferring data offline because we do support modes where you can grab a template, edit it, and then reload it up to the system. If you're not on the network, you might want to be able to do that. Again, we want to be a little careful about who we give that kind of permission. Showing job clocks. Well, that's kind of a thing. You have to figure out if that clock on the bottom is going to drive people crazy or not. It's a motivational factor for some people. It's a little too big brotherish for others, so you may or may not decide to have those clocks showing. HTML data sets. Again, it's kind of like a transfer of data. All right. Depending upon your location, you may or may not want to give people that ability. We have what we call preventive actions. When we have a symptom, anybody that's running it can denote a new symptom or say a new way to address that symptom to resolve it. But the next step beyond that is looking at a preventive action. In other words, looking at you have a number of symptoms that are happening recurringly, and now you want to execute a preventive action. And a lot of times it's going to be addressing a vendor to get different parts and this type of stuff. There's a little more power than you want to give some people, so you can turn that on or off. Special instructions. We can embed special instructions within a job because you might have a standard process that you use, but then engineering comes in and says, well, we want to try this on this one job. Well, you can put the special instructions in there. And so somebody may or may not, an engineer you might want to allow to edit the special instructions, but other people you might not want to. That's fairly rare. What's a little more common is what we call waiving a step. In other words, most steps are either going to pass or fail, but you can give people permission to waive a step, and that acts like a pass, and that'll allow them to continue the job, but it is not actually a pass. It'll give them a little different symbol. It's a double check mark, and basically you're just saying, okay, you know what you're doing. I'm going to allow you to proceed even though you didn't really pass, and I don't want to make you lie. So it's properly documented. We have a master library that's going to be like where your bill of material is. Again, you might want to restrict some people. Depending upon the user, you might want to only let them view jobs. Okay, in which case we won't actually allow them to edit anything. But it just depends upon your level of confidence within the person. There's an email address here. You have to put something in the email address. It does not have to be an email address. Okay, so a lot of times people say, well, what happens if you don't have an email address for a production work? That's fine. Just put a character in there. It's not going to hurt anything. You do want to know who the user's manager is. In some things, in terms of escalation, When there's a problem, we do need to know who is the manager for that person. There's some stuff under advanced here, just names and phone numbers and stuff. Usually that's not too boring. But that's basically how you create a new user. It's really pretty straightforward. Only the administrator can do that. While we're in talking about user manager, we do want to talk about user settings, and the actual users can get into the user settings. Okay, so if I'm logged in as new guy 5, I can set up some defaults. I want to open the job, and that's usually pretty typical. Some people you might only want to have open in view mode. Okay, managers are real typical for that because you don't want them accidentally changing something. So they'll just default to open in view mode. Because if they're opening a job, really it's just to see what's going on in the job. It's not to actually do anything. We can give them a prompt if we want. I usually don't. I like to auto-collapse the tree on the left. Just keep everything nice and current so I don't have to manually scroll anything. I definitely like to see the congratulations messages, but again, you don't have to do that. I just pat somebody on the back when they fix something. The auto-command LEDs, those are just some fluff, basically, if you want to see that on the screen. We have some do not show dialogues. In other words, like a real typical dialogue would be, do you want the system to automatically resize the pitches to a reasonable format for the screen? Because pitches come in really big, and typically you want to have them automatically sized down to a reasonable size to save memory. You can click on a do not show this dialogue again, and it won't show you that dialogue again, but then you forget about it. So you can reset those hide settings so everything will show up for you. Pretty good if you get a little senioritis like I get sometimes. More important to me is the default font for the instructions. As I get a little bit older, I like to have a little bigger font, so I can go ahead and push a bigger font size in there by default. Now you can always change the fonts within the instructions, but that's just a lot of extra work. If I set my default to the right size, then I don't have to do that. Alright, those are most of the user stuff. We'll just touch just a second on languages. Alright, I can select what language I'm using for the system. I'm using English, but you can use other things. These are for the actual commands, like the text up in here and this type of stuff. So I'll leave that as English. Then within the pages, you can have multi-language or not, okay, depending upon your template. So you can go ahead and you can say, gee, I want to show English and Chinese, or you can get that Chinese off of there. So you can just custom tailor that to whatever your needs are. One thing, and I'm not quite sure why it's been happening, but sometimes we get multiple versions of English if we import data. It doesn't hurt anything, but you will see a couple of English entries there. Don't sweat it. All right. That's about it for setting up individual users. Thank you very much.